Hey folks, this is Centered.Live. You can tell a lot about what about a person, about the music they're listening to in their car. So sometimes it's calm piano and sunshine, and other times it's loud drums and rock and roll and your favorite soda, right? But here's the question: what soundtrack of your life is saying about you? What is music you like? What does it say about you? And today on Centered Life, we're talking about how music keeps us grounded, or maybe it pulls us off balance.
Exactly. I love
So,
that idea. Let's go for it.
so welcome to Centered Live, where real conversations meet practical faith. I'm Randy Burgoyne, joined by my good friend Paul Maloy, who lives a centered life. He's he, he's a good example. And Paul, our topic today
Yes.
is the soundtrack of centered living, how the music we choose, from our worship to our workouts,
hmm
shapes our mindset, our motivation, our emotional balance.
I
And
have been really excited for this. So,
I,
yeah, let's
I
do it.
know, and I've been looking forward to having Kevin with us, and of course, joining us.
Yep.
And
Welcome,
someone,
Kevin.
yeah, is
You.
someone who's had music part of their lives for his entire life, right? I mean, it's been, uh, and not only that, he's influenced thousands of people. Kevin Peay is one half of the beloved music duo Afterglow, along with his longtime friend Joel McCausland. Now, I first heard about Afterglow when I was on my mission in France. Somebody had this pirated cassette tape of Afterglow music
There's
that
a
he
lot
had,
of there's a lot of those out there.
there's a lot that that he would play some music. But I think it was after my mission that I heard the breakout song that I fell in love with, which was "I Heard Him Come,"
Sure.
Yes.
and that remains one of the most recognizable and heartfelt spiritual songs ever recorded in Latter Day Saint culture or history, for that matter. So, Kevin, we're happy to have you here with us today. It's an honor to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for being on with us today.
with my new
So,
friend
Kevin,
Paul.
Yeah.
let's start right off where the day begins. Those early hours, as we wake up and we get set for our day. And you've talked a little bit about the first sounds that we hear can really set the tone for everything that follows. So, let's start right there. What do you think? How does the morning music influence our day?
Well, I think if you want to get real technical about it, the heavens have the best music to offer, and the music of prayer in starting the day, whatever your believability is or your belief system is. If you believe in an all supreme creator and that there's a God up above and a heaven and a Savior, Jesus Christ, then that's probably one of the best places to start, is listening to the sounds and the music of heaven as you ponder what's about to happen as you get out of bed in the morning. Great place to start. I guess when you're talking about the music of the day, I need to ask you, Paul, which century are you in? Which which decade are you talking about?
Oh, so true. So true. In fact, interesting that you should mention that because I'm just getting ready to teach my students about the 60s, my
Yeah,
history class.
yeah,
And part of what we analyze is the evolution of rock and roll
uh-huh,
from the early 50s when it sees its genesis, as it evolves from jazz,
yeah,
and then how it extends through the 60s and into the 70s, and how the tone changes. And so, yeah, when you talk about, which decade, I mean, obviously we could go back to the Bach and Beethoven time frame, or we could certainly go through all of the different genres of music, and even through
I don't
today,
think
right?
I don't think we really need to do that, but I think we're looking at this from a personal aspect as it pertains to our particular growth individually as we grew up, and now what it looks like specifically for those that are certain age groups and what that looks like for them. I was not into music early on. When I was 8 years old, I didn't really care for it. I didn't want to sing in a choir.
Interesting.
Even my teenage years, I didn't want to do much of that. I took piano lessons, and music was not in my bucket list opportunity. It was baseball and basketball and the sports, and then it really my storyline morphs into generational, because you've got a high school friend by the name of Joel, who we talked about. We actually knew each other in junior high, and Randy mentioned Joel, and he was really the influencer that got me back into thinking that music could be a part of the orchestra of my life. That was after baseball practice in Pleasant Grove High School, and I'd come in from practice, and he was in the auditorium, and he was playing a song by Eric Carmen, all by myself, and that was apropos to where he was playing the piano by himself. But then I show up, and he says, "I'm putting a little assembly piece together. You want to join me?" And I said, "You know what? I don't know why I'm going to say yes, but I shouldn't." But I did. And then we put a little harmony together, and this is in 1978. And so the soundtrack that we were around at that point in time was Barry Manilow, the Commodores, Fred,
Yes.
Journey, Boston, 8-track tapes.
Right there with you.
Yeah, 8-track tapes, and you're getting your first car, and you're getting a CB radio, and you're goofing off with all those soundtracks, and the soundtracks of my sister's lives were still sitting in my bedroom downstairs, which was the Cowsills and Peter, Paul, and Mary, and Paul Revere and the Raiders, and and all these different records that my oldest sister, later threw away. And I'm like, oh man, would that volume of library be worth something? And so the soundtracks of the decades, where we were plugged in, was really the soundtrack that we grew up at. So in my world, all of a sudden, Joel asked me to come start singing at restaurants. And so what do you sing at restaurants? You don't sing church music.
Right.
Everything that we were singing at the restaurants at a little place called Old Dan Tucker's down in Orem was Joel was playing along, and I was playing Babe by Styx, and he's playing all kinds of songs, and I'm putting harmony, and we got a tip jar out there. And that was the soundtrack of 1979-80 for us, was all of those current hits. We couldn't sing Michael Jackson. It was too upbeat, and it didn't make sense for us to do that. But Donnie was doing his thing, and Marie, and and then we walked out one night from a restaurant performance, and somebody asked us if we ever spoke to youth groups. And so here we are, seniors in high school, trying to figure out when's our missions and this, that, and the other. And then all of a sudden he said, "Can you do something different than what you're playing tonight at the restaurant, which is popular contemporary stuff?" We said, "Sure. What, you have any ideas?" And they said, "Yeah, why don't you do The Quest? And why don't you do some Alexi Azevedo's music?
Yes.
And why don't you do some Janice Cat Perry's music?" And so we started a little fireside to go speak to a group in Alpine, and kind of the rest is history. We did that little soundtrack of other religious songs, because we hadn't been writing anything at that point in time, and I just started kind of getting back into it, getting my feet wet. So anyway, that soundtrack, that's what it sounded like. Now all of a sudden there's a shift from Barry Manilow, the Commodores, the Bread, all the stuff that we were singing, to, oh, here we're coming over to this church music. And then all of a sudden, when we started to perform that church music in church settings, then that became a little bit of an additional soundtrack, which is interesting because here you've got the soundtrack of the world and all the popularity of the singers. Then all of a sudden you come over to the soundtrack of quote religious songs. And then that kind of brings a whole nother element that creates a new soundtrack that you're presenting and you're feeling.
Right.
And
right.
I guess the bottom line for anybody's music is whatever your playlist is, how does it make you feel?
Perfect.
And at the end, and at the end of that playlist, are you happy or are you conflicted? And that's really the soundtrack for everybody needs to make a determination. Because it's like me, when I get on my bike and I want to get some exercise, I'm listening to Michael Dowdle From the Hip and Sam Carden's real strong instrumental fun stuff. And that's more of an upbeat as a driver for me to be able to exercise and do some of those things. But then all of a sudden you get to the Michael Dowdle hymns. That's a sacred setting at a certain time, and that becomes a new soundtrack. And what's interesting is your soundtrack really changes based upon your experience of the day or the season. Yeah. And what you experience in your life. For instance, if you are just on cruise control and nothing is going wrong, you're probably just in a mode where your soundtrack is going to be anything that's current or popular when you grew up that you love on your playlist. And that gives you memories of the old days and good times. And you come back to a lot of flooding memories of, oh, that's where I were when that song was popular and number one. And then all of a sudden you have something like a major tragedy or something that just really rocks your core. That soundtrack of what you used to listen to fades a little bit, and then something that can try and bring you to more a peaceful environment and more in touch with heaven to calm your soul and your fears and your concerns. And so all of us have to kind of seek what that soundtrack is. I can go on forever. So just break this up if you've got questions, because I can just head off to why religious music was so important to us for a while, but then all of a sudden we showed up in country music for 4 years. And why did we do that? Why did we leave the soundtrack of the religious stuff to head to country? And that
we should explore that. Yeah, absolutely, we should. And it's so interesting, and I love what you're framing this towards, this the soundtrack of our lives. I know that just exactly like you said, every time I hear Jerry Rafferty's Baker Street, it doesn't matter where I am, but if I hear that, it immediately throws me back to my senior year in high school. And with that comes all of the memories of what I was doing and maybe how I was during that time frame. But I certainly know that I was raised in a very musical family. In fact, as a child, I often fell asleep to my mom playing the piano in our living room, or I would fall asleep after school laying in front of a great big huge cabinet stereo system playing soundtrack records. That was just part of what we had in our home. But certainly as I went into high school and being an instrumentalist, I played clarinet and saxophone, and loving jazz music. Doc Severinsen, Maynard Ferguson, Chuck Mangione were definitely people that I listened to a lot. And we would go into a car that had quadraphonic stereo 8-track, push that in, and just off of battery power, we would blast that sound, so that it was like we could feel it, not just, hear it. Right. Loved it. But certainly, I really appreciate the fact that you called out that it impacts how we feel, and music does that. In fact, I had this scheduled for a little bit later, but I'll just mention that there was a book that was written by Daniel Levitin, who had gained some fame in rock and roll. And he wrote a book called This Is Your Brain on Music, paraphrasing in a sense, the idea this is your brain on drugs, because his thesis was that music can override or emphasize whatever it is that we're feeling. So if we're feeling down and we want something to feed into that, then we can choose, right? It's always a choice. Yeah. We can choose music that either changes the way that we feel, or it emphasizes and reinforces the way we feel, which can be destructive if we're not careful. And so I wonder, Kevin, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit more about especially what you were just talking about, that change from maybe being religious centered to gospel, and why you decided to do that, and how perhaps the impact and the importance of the lyrics actually plays into that.
Yeah, you find that, as you know, that we all have different moments when a speaker, nobody speaks to a whole group, and then everybody feels the exact same way. Mm-hmm. The speaker may be hitting one person out of 100. Mm-hmm. Because everybody resonates to different things, and there's so many variables of how our consciousness works to make our heart feel and our brain to calibrate properly with our heart. So that's why there's so many different varieties of music, so many different songs, so many different applications to going to the mountain to feel something, or going to a safe place at the beach where somebody just finds their safe harbor. Mm-hmm. And we all have variable safe harbors. But in our world, at one point in time, frankly, we just ran out of things to do on the productions that Shadow Mountain and Deseret Book allowed us to do for many years. And one thing led to another, and people were asking us, do you do anything that's a little more upbeat? Mm-hmm. And so we did that early on in '84. We wrote a bunch of love songs and did 2 albums that were called It Takes Love and Love Notes. And we actually took a band and we went on tour with Deseret Book, and we did venues. And that was our version of love songs back in '84, '85. Then we went back to religious. But that experience of going on concert tour without religious songs was still positive, different, date night, Valentine's,
Love it.
Those type things that was a little more seasonal. And it was heartfelt that you were writing something for your wife or for experiences just different than putting a hymn together or a religious melody, if you want to phrase it as that. And then in '96, we kept being asked to do rodeo national anthems. And so we both grew up in Linden, Pleasant Grove, Utah, and we just put our boots on. And then all of a sudden it was just kind of a natural gravitation.
Both literally and figuratively, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was a natural gravitation to be able to say, well, you know what, let's do some positive Christian country. And one of the artists that was out there doing that was John Michael Montgomery. And he was a backup singer for a number of years and went off and did solo work. But he really influenced us to listen to the country beat and to be able to take a string fiddle and all of that stuff from the country, not bluegrass, but more countryside. Mm-hmm. And he kind of influenced us to start searching for songs and writing songs that were a little more country, so that we could take not the love song band of '84, but we could take the country band of 1986 or 1996, excuse me. And then we took off and recorded 2 albums in Nashville, one at Javelina RCA, and then the second one at another one in Nashville. But we got a little playtime from a song called No Love Lost that we had found. And we were able to go out into the county fair world. And we went to Kennewick, Washington, and we toured here and we toured there. Many people might even remember Ryan Shoup now, who's rubber band. Yeah,
Yes.
Ryan was our fiddle player for a number of years until he figured out this isn't going to go anywhere. And of course, at this time, we weren't named Afterglow. We were named McCausland and Peay. And we spelled our names phonetically different, and we branded ourselves into the country world. And we went out there into that environment at the county fairs and some of the country concert venues and found that it was really a lot of fun. And we're singing these songs that are, that are upbeat, positive, a little bit of a twist on Lost My Heart sometimes, and Let's Make It Mean Something, and Day by Day, and No Love Lost, and just good music that had a good message. But yet the environment that we found ourselves into in some of those areas were just not healthy. And what I meant by that is you would notice the crowd, and all of a sudden there might be a subset of that crowd who maybe had some different intentions as it pertained to your future existence and what they wanted you to become.
Oh, interesting.
And then we learned that it took a lot of money and it took a lot of sex appeal to be able to continue on that path. And in many instances, there have been some that have been able to manage it through that whole environment. But Joel and I decided that it was probably best that we really focused on what we knew to be true and right for us. And we came back, left the country thing, and went back and put everything under Afterglow again. And it's been interesting because we branded the love songs and the country songs now under the versatility side of Afterglow. And but we don't really get out and perform a lot. Joel does a lot more performing than I do. Whenever he's got an opportunity for me to come along, I enjoy doing that. We're doing something this coming Sunday night up at the Western Sports Arena for an interfaith thing we've been invited to do. And we're just not back out on tour. But my point is, we are still creating and we are still feeling a lot of things. But most of our messaging now that we write is really about where we are in our 60s.
Right.
And a lot of the storylines that have come forward in our writing. And now my playlist, particularly, it's interesting. The more Randy talked about this tonight, when I get in the car during the day in the morning, first thing I do, of course, is check the traffic. The second thing I do is see what's playing on FM 100. And then that's kind of the soundtrack of the adult contemporary that I'm a little bit used to. And that's, and then I'll go to 107.5 whenever I want to hear a solid Christian song. The K-Love world.
Yes.
I have become fascinated by the K-Love world and many of the wonderful songs that are out there for those people that are producing, which is interesting because that whole world of feeling back in Nashville, there's a number of different sides of that Nashville experience. There's the gospel writing,
right? And
everybody knows all about what the gospel country makes you feel and do, and the good stuff that's there. But even you hear some of the conflict between, some of those people that have gone a different direction and had to come back, and their followers have left them because they went this direction and they got confused. But most of the people always come back to their core value of their belief. And so that's really the soundtrack of my life, is what is my core value of belief. And so that's why I'll just refresh on the old days on FM 100 or 99.5 and listen to some of those fun songs. And I'll occasionally get back to 103.5 on the old rock style. But then as soon as it goes too far that direction, I'm back to listening to a gospel message and say, okay, center yourself back. Then you'll pop over because you're going to go on a date, and you go over to the love songs for a minute, and we think about bread and Barry Manilow and all the fun stuff we used to do. So my I'm a little bit of a ping pong in the soundtrack of my life, from what I'm
You
seeing.
have a very eclectic sound choice, and
And I don't think there's a problem with that. I think that's
No.
awesome.
No, but you, Paul and Randy, you have your own, because it's
Yeah.
what,
Yes.
But now all of a sudden we get in an environment with my grandkids, and they've got their own.
Yep.
So
And with my students, I hear about what they're listening to, and sometimes they're very oriented to classic, like 60s and 70s rock and roll, sometimes 80s. But of course, then they also, like you said, they have their current groups and their current sound that they listen to, and in all honesty, it's not always conducive to good mental health, let alone spiritual health. And I think, Randy, you had a question relative to that.
Yeah. So, Kevin, when I've gone to a few of your firesides, not a lot, but the music that I've been exposed to that you've produced has always been reverent and spiritual music. And it has the ability to reset people emotionally. And I've seen people come in to a fireside that they kind of drag in, like, do I really want to be here? They listen to your music and to your messages, and by the end they're smiling. I mean, they're talking, and people want to linger. They don't want to leave that environment, and I think that is so valuable, to have that emotional and spiritual healing as part of your firesides, your concerts, your whatever performances, even if it's the national anthem.
Well, I appreciate that, Randy. Let me just clarify that one thing, that if the only hope that we have, or that I have, if I'm ever on stage, or if we're ever presenting something via podcast, or producing something in the studio for any reason, is that it points directly to the Savior. If we have missed that mark, and people are not feeling the heavenly tug, then we have set ourselves as messengers above the message. And so the balance of that is critical. But what's interesting is we talked about it, different people feel things at different times. You can listen to a Christmas song, and all of a sudden it'll set you in the mood of Christmas and giving.
Yep.
And that can be a popular secular song, whatever it might be. But as long as those songs and those lyrics are pointing you to good, and the light that is within you, then that will cultivate the right direction on where you need to go and what you need to do. Whenever I get confused, you know what my back balance is? Classical. So if there's ever a time when I can't really find something that feels right, I'll move it right to a classical piece or an instrumental piece. That speaks. And then you can let your mind free flow through wonderful classical music that comes. And so I don't know if this is helping as far as the soundtrack of your life, but this is a little bit how I have to adjust and move forward.
Well, and I appreciate your comments and helping us to understand better the impact of music, again, as the soundtrack of our lives. And I think it's important that we point out that classical music doesn't mean that all music is the same. It's not always quiet and reflective and relaxing. Certainly there is bad classical music, and by that I mean discordant and not necessarily the kind of music that we would listen to relax. And certainly when you think about some of the bigger masterpieces, whether it's Tchaikovsky or Beethoven or Vivaldi, there's classical music that can in fact pump us up, right? It's emotional, and sometimes the masterful and inspired uh, uh, compositions that have been part of classical music can be very important, but we have to be careful because it's not all going to be just automatically classical is sleepy and old and not worth our time, and neither is it something that we can't not be careful with. On the flip side of that, certainly as I was growing up in the 60s and 70s, my parents, were very wary of rock and roll. And that doesn't mean that all rock and roll is bad. In fact, certainly a lot of rock and roll has had fun, uplifting, go get 'em kind of lyrics, and again, fun beats and fun tunes and things that stick in your mind and can change the way that we feel. But similarly, there are dark pieces of rock and roll that necessarily we need to be careful about as we listen to them. We need to be purposeful in the music that we choose. In fact, music really has a way of of creating community, and I certainly see that, especially as I've been now in the classroom for almost 2 decades, and it's interesting to me. The groups of kids that pull together sometimes on the basis of the music that they enjoy together. So you do have the country western kids, you do have the classical music kids, you do have the classic rock and roll kids, and you have the ones that are more modern and what they like to listen to. And sometimes whether it's rap, whether it's heavy metal, they pull together, and sometimes they share the music that they're listening to back and forth, right? I mean, again, that community still, it serves, I think, as a reminder that, again, it's a choice and we need to be careful with that choice. So, Randy, Kevin, thoughts?
Yeah, as you're going through that, it goes back to how does it make you feel? And
Right.
if you're only programmed to feel one way and that's all you know, maybe it's a good choice for us to experience something else that might be good, that doesn't take you down a rabbit hole in a dark place. And one of those opportunities for all of us is good movies. And so if you notice that if you took the music out of all the good music, all the good movies, and you just had dialogue through a movie, and there was no music, boy, it'd be tough to sit through.
Right.
But if you extract the music away from the pictures in the movie and listen to the soundtrack, you can see the images and you can feel what you felt in a good movie.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If you choose to go that direction. So, one of the other soundtracks has always been Broadway, and I classify classical as much as Broadway and movie soundtracks in that classical approach as well. And I can go on and name lots of wonderful movies that I love the soundtrack to, but one of my favorites that I go to all the time is Smallfoot. The movie Smallfoot, the music in that is just fun.
The dinosaur movie, the little kid dinosaur movie.
No, it's the Yeti movie.
Oh, okay.
Right.
It's Smallfoot, the Yeti movie, and it's always fun to go back and feel a number of different things through that movie, because I enjoyed the movie. I enjoyed the movie and the principles and associated with it, and then you get into the Beauty and the Beast, and you get into a lot of the Disney stuff, and we felt that in a number of times because we went to London twice and recorded 4 albums over there with the London National Philharmonic. And so,
oh my goodness,
when John Williams, we were in the same room. John Williams had just left doing a Disney piece when we got there to do our Touch of the Master's Hand and More Perfect Light and How Great Thou Art hymns on some of the hymn projects. And we were there with the London National. But that orchestra side of things done extremely well, and watching these master craftspeople,
Yes.
master craftsmen and women do their thing is just unreal. But again, the collective finality of that finished product, you can take your mind anywhere that you want it to go when you're listening through that, and you just remember great parts of movies and this, that, and the other. So we all create our own soundtrack. It's all based upon what we choose to do on a daily basis, and then we hopefully pick out the good parts, and we squash the bad parts, and we focus on things that bring us peace, love, and joy.
Yeah. So I have a loaded question. I Heard Him Come is still one of my favorite all-time LDS songs. Tell us a little bit about how that came to be, how you came to record it. I know it was someone else that had written the music.
Correct.
And then when was the first time you sang that? What was the first performance you had with that?
Well, remember when we came out of the restaurant in 1979, 70, and 80?
Mm-hmm.
There was part of that discovery of finding music to go do that first fireside over in Alpine, Utah. And somehow, some way, I don't know if it was Joel, but he came up with a copy of I Heard Him Come. It was arranged by James Duke and Nora Moore, written by Jeff Goodrich from Bountiful, Utah.
Mm.
And so that was the first time that we had ever heard it. And somebody played it for us, we sang it, and that was just something that we knew that we needed to put on whatever we did moving forward. Jeff Goodrich lives out in the Basin. We chatted about a year ago in regards to just how that song has impacted so many. He's as humble as the day is long, and wants just people to feel it. And so we went ahead and determined that we needed to sing that prior to our missions, and then when we came home, we wanted to record it. And that's when we put it on Someone Is Listening, which was the very first product we did in 1983. And then Deseret Book came to us in 84 and asked us if they could do most of our music going forward. And so that became a signature piece for us in the Someone Is Listening 83. And we usually closed most of our firesides with that song, wherever we were asked to come and do a fireside or an offering. And it was just the piece that left people pointing to where you needed to point, to the Savior Jesus Christ. And then we decided we wanted to do another different version of that, and we refreshed it through Michael Dowdle and the guitar, and put it on the Best of Afterglow, one of the albums, and redid that, and it was a wonderful version. I love the simplicity of the guitar, and if anybody listening ever wants to hear that, they can go to the afterglowmusic.com, and the menu's there.
Oh, fantastic.
That. And that will also talk about the podcast that we're doing, which is talking about the historical events associated with how these songs were written and why. But anyway, it's the only thing we know. It's our offering. It's simple. And as long as we try and point people heavenward to the right place, then heaven hopefully will bless us all.
And since you mentioned your website, I'm going to splash it up onto the screen here. So your afterglowmusic.com. I wanted to make sure people got that that web address correctly so that they can listen to your music and feel it. I mean, it's just music that you can feel and enjoy. You know, it's a great Sunday afternoon music just to sit back and relax.
Anytime music.
There we go. Right.
Well, and what's even, to expand on that, and I don't know, Randy, when you want to cut this off, but the music is an international language.
Yes.
And so we found that out when we recorded in Portuguese and went to Brazil. We found that out when we recorded in Japanese and went to Japan. And here we are singing the same songs, but we're translating and singing in that language, even though I don't know Japanese and I don't know Portuguese, but I can read it phonetically. But the international music is international, and if the music is presented as an offering, and you're doing your best to point to the right place to do good, there'll be a handful of people that might feel something that helps them feel good and do good. But so there's a lot of great people doing a lot of great things out there in music and touching a lot of lives. And that's why we're all part of what I collectively say, the Lord's symphony. And each of us have our own section in that symphony. And as long as we're doing the best we can under the master conductor, the music of all people in the orchestra across the planet is doing good things. Whatever faith, whatever non-faith, as long as you're trying to promote good things, it will win and create peace, love, and hope in the world today.
And isn't that what we need the very most of throughout all of the human family around the world? And I love the fact that you absolutely nailed the fact that that music is such a deeply human thing, but not just human. It's you find music throughout all of nature, and it's such a remarkable gift from a loving Heavenly Father who knows not only the power of music, but how much we would need music in our lives, both in terms of providing some energy and some joy, as well as the times that we would benefit from the peaceful effects of quieting music, which certainly both can be found within the hymns of Christianity. You've got, the ones that are motivating and invigorating, and then you've got the ones that bring that sense of peace and calm. We certainly see that throughout the hymnals of all faiths, but in particular because of our collective experiential background. Certainly, within the realm of Christian music, we see those, we see and hear and feel the hymns as something that that can bring us incredible joy and peace, especially when we're dealing with a troubled heart. So I think it's so vital, and I know that I've already mentioned this a couple other times, but we need to remember that, as human beings, we curate, if you will, what we eat and what we wear, but not always what we hear. And so it's really important, I think, that we understand that what we hear shapes how we feel. And therefore, how we feel then naturally shapes who we become, at least for a time. It can be temporary, right? But repeated patterns over time become habit, and habit becomes destiny. And so I think, again, we just need to be mindful of making wise choices in the music that we listen to, and very literally participate in as we're listening to the music. So,
well, I think that too, one thing that Kevin mentioned earlier about the lyrics, I think that music has a way of driving those lyrics right past your conscious to your subconscious, and you hear everything that's going on in that song, whether it's good or bad or positive or negative. And I've noticed that I'd love to listen to pop music while I'm at the gym and working out, because it's upbeat. I get 130 beats per minute.
right. Yep.
And I'm going, gets my heart rate up. But sometimes the words are a little less than
Yeah.
spiritual. And I've tried to pare that down now. And now I changed my playlist to B positive. I actually have the letter B plus, and so I only put positive music into that playlist. So, well, thank you, Kevin. It's just been wonderful having you here. Any final thoughts about choosing music and lyrics in our lives?
I just would go right back uh, to it's a choice, and it's a choice to what you want to feel. And so your choices will change over time based upon experience.
Mm-hmm.
And but the human soul craves goodness and the light.
Ideally, we hope that's true. Yeah.
Ideally, it does. It is masked by experience, doubt, fear,
Mm-hmm.
and trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And someone that we all know that does not want us to feel light.
Yeah.
And so that has to be a conscious choice to actually pick and choose your playlist and to make it the soundtrack of your life. And that will change over time.
Sure.
It just does.
And it should. I mean, we're saying that it naturally can and should change over time and morph back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you for. Oh, go ahead, Randy. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. And for those that are listening, I just saying take that invitation. This week make your own centered playlist. Fill it with songs that lift your soul and calm your heart, and especially bring you closer to God. And yeah, and I think that if you can pick wonderful songs, some Afterglow songs, right?
There's a lot. No, there's a lot of great artists. But if you want to throw one of us in there, that's great too.
Yep. And if it's I Heard Him Come, then I'll be happy, right?
Or if it's Straight from the Heart from 1984, or if it's Day by Day from the country of 1996.
Or Warriors of Light. That's
Warriors of Light.
That's a little more upbeat one. I like that one. So.
Or Come and See, which is our 45th commemorative. So we're coming up on almost 50 years.
Wow.
50 years.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for joining us tonight, but also thank you so much for the music that you have shared over those 46 years, almost 50 years, and what a gift that has been. So from our heart, we thank you and appreciate all that you have done over those decades. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Paul and Randy. This is a pleasure for me to be here tonight.
Thank you, and be sure to like and follow and share. Help us to continue spreading centered living. So join us next time on Centered Live, and have a good week.